everyone, and welcome to this episode of Solving Difficult People Problems. I am your host, Brenda Knight-Bonnell, and you can always find me by just searching through hashtag Dear Brenda. I am currently on the road and looking at what my computer screen is showing me is that very clearly I need a much better setup to travel if I do podcasts while I'm on the road. So this is as good as it's gonna get. So the sound is not the best. The video certainly is not gonna be the best, but you know what? We're gonna roll with it. So anyway, I hope y'all are doing super good today. And it's not going to be a very lengthy podcast, but what I want to share with you folks today, I was inspired to actually come up with this topic because it's an important one. And why I say that is because it gives you a foundation for really understanding how people think. Because I think that's something, I don't even think that's something, I know it's something that we all get very, very frustrated with, and that's understanding why people think the way they do. Why do they do what they do? And it's all based off of something super important to understand, and that is a person's worldview. And I've talked about worldview. If you've been following my stuff for a while, you've heard me talk about worldview. Now I'm going to talk about it in the context of why people become kind of difficult or seemingly difficult, or why people are a little bit more challenging than you really want them to be. And part of so what is worldview? Let's start there. So first off, a person's worldview is the influences that help shape them into who they are throughout their entire life. It starts when we're really young. And it starts with the home that we're raised in. And it starts with the people that are surrounding that home, being friends and families, neighbors, neighborhoods, communities. And then it rolls into the schools and the things that we learn and live while we're in school. Or for those that aren't lucky enough to be in school, you learn from the hardships of life, right? The hardships of life. There are some kids actually out there that don't get enrolled in school. And I'm not talking about people who are homeschooled. I'm talking about kids that have it bad. And even though the laws say they have to go to school, there are children out there that never see a day of school. So, and that's a horrible thing. So it doesn't have to be bad. It can also be the influences that people have if they're in a really good community or if they're in a really good school district. It doesn't matter whether it's good or bad. It's just the point is that these influences are what shapes a person's view of the world. Then, as we get older and we start listening to how our folks speak, approach, talk about things, socioeconomical situations, political situations, and we start absorbing the more macro environment, now we're starting to understand more about what's going on in the world beyond what we see in front of us. And that means that we also get experiences as teenagers, and those shape and mold us. And then as we roll into adults, the hardships that come at us, and then we start going back to all of that history in the past, all of that data that we've collected, and attaching what our current present situations are or is, whatever is grammatically correct, back to how we have known to handle things, or the influences around us have handled things as we came up in the world. And throughout time, we're going to have really positive experiences that are just going to really make us feel empowered. And we're going to have really negative experiences that are going to make us feel very jaded. And then we're going to have experiences where we really don't give a flying fig about something. And we're going to have experiences that are really going to stop and make us think. So that's our worldview. And if we have enough, and this is how human beings work, if we have enough of the same occurrence over and over and over and over again, then all of a sudden we start to believe that something is true. That is a very hard nut to crack. So if you are, let's say, for instance, owning and operating a business in a more urban environment, and you have a very diverse workforce, and some of those individuals in your workforce who are frontline come from a much harder and harsher environment within an urban setting, there is going to be a belief about certain things. And that is going to be a very difficult thing for you to overcome if you run up against them. And that's what's called worldview. Conversely, like right now, I'm in Iowa. I'm speaking in Iowa, which is the reason why I have to do this on the road. And I'm surrounded not by in an urban environment, I'm surrounded by a very rural community. And this is a community to where opportunities don't necessarily come frequently outside of the scope of the metropolitan area that I'm in. And so for them, there could be times in life where they don't believe opportunity would ever show. But what's interesting is that if you're in an urban setting and folks in an urban setting don't believe that opportunities come often and frequently, conversely, in the environment that I'm in, they don't think opportunities come as well. Kind of interesting, right? So it's a person's worldview. And it is safe to say that life is very different in the urban environment of New York City and surrounding areas, boroughs, townships, all that other stuff, right? As it is in the middle here in Iowa. Iowa has its culture, so does New York City. And tomorrow I'm flying from Iowa to Denver and then Denver back home. And when I'm in Denver, it's a different culture. So all those people who are moving around, what's really awesome is that I get the latitude. Actually, here's the real story about it. My flight, something went weird with my flight coming out of Iowa. And I am a airplane fanatic. I love flying. I really do. I love commercial flight. I'm just goofy that way. I loved it when I was a kid growing up, love it to this day. And so I had an option to take a flight and get stuck in an airport I really didn't want to be in because I was just there. Or I could take another flight and actually go further west, rack up some miles, and sit in a beautiful environment looking out over the mountains. So I decided to go ahead and go west just to be able to go east, right? And so that's why I'm going to Denver. I'm just sitting there for a couple hours. But you know what? That's awesome, right? Not a lot of people can say that they do that on a daily basis. So I'm very, very fortunate, very privileged. And so thank you for humoring me on that one just for a moment. But anyway, as I digress, um, as we come from all of these different places, we come from Tampa, Florida, we come over from California, we come from Denver, we come from Montana, we come from places like Iowa, and then we come from the East Coast, and we all converge and we mess up and, you know, we start moving around through the country. Guess what? We have different worldviews. And it's not just about the homes that we were raised in, although that does play a significant part about it, but it's also about the cultures within the culture of the United States. So when you're talking about people who are difficult, you're also dealing with a lot of cultural issues. And I haven't even gotten into race and gender, and I'm not going to. I think if you take the lessons applied just from people living in different subcultures and realize that there are layers to this and that there are levels to this, I think you'll suddenly start to realize that there are cultural differences. There are cultural differences in how somebody and in the worldview of how they're raised on values. Think about that for a second. Imagine growing up in a place where you had strong principles and values that your family abided to. And then you go out into the world, and then all of a sudden, the world does not play the game the way you do at all. And now you've got cultures and values, or values and norms, I should say, that are now starting to run up on each other. And they don't always align. Now, I never even mentioned that there was good or bad. I just mentioned that they had values and principles. And they can be positive and negative. So, if you really want to know how to deal with difficult people, if you can get to them before they become difficult and build and win trust. Now you've got a chance to really, really work well with somebody. And that could be if they're coming into your company, if you've adopted a team, right? It doesn't matter. If you are able to start to really get to know the people that you work with, and I'm not talking about getting to know their families. I'm not talking about the old Hollywood approach or what we see on the big screen on TV. I'm talking about genuine, authentic connection with some boundaries so that people don't seem to think that if you're in a leadership position just because they know you, that you're going to, be a little softer on them or you're going to give them latitude and leniency. I mean, don't open up that can of worms. What I'm saying is that you understand how they think. You take time to learn how they think. If they are a least trusting person because their worldview has taught them to be that way, that means that you're going to have to work a little bit harder or think a little bit more strategically when it comes to approaching them on a very difficult situation. If you have somebody who's extremely easygoing and doesn't seem to have those problems, you can probably be your path to communicating is probably going to be a little bit shorter, right? I'm not talking about managing people different. I'm talking about relating to people differently. And don't lose sight of who you are in that process. There's a lot of people that happens to, and I don't want to see that happen to you. Don't lose sight of who you are in the process. And when you start managing people differently, you start treating people differently based off of, well, actually not even based off of, if you don't, that's, so let me stop here. I want to explain something before I go too far down the rabbit hole and I can't come back. The reason why core values and utilizing core values and taking a core value or all of them and weighing them against every single decision that you have to make and then teaching people that this is how we make decisions is going to benefit you in the long run, because what's going to happen is that you won't lose yourself in trying to quote unquote manage everybody differently. Let me explain. Years ago, and I've written about this, and it's really funny because my old boss, he flips out every single time. I tell him, like, I wrote about you again. He says, God, he says, just never thought in a million years anybody would do something like that. So his name was Tom, and he was absolutely awesome. We worked for CarMax together. We worked together for a long time, and we've known each other now since 2001. So it's what, 15 years almost? Yeah. So we still talk. I actually got him into being a coach over at the Honor Foundation. So it's pretty awesome. We actually get to continue to work together, which is pretty great. Anyway, I digress. So anytime somebody had a idea or a suggestion that they felt was going to make our operations better at the company that we worked with, and we sold cars. That's what we did, and it's a national company. And so Tom would always listen to them, and he would ask them one very important question. And what he was always doing, and nobody really got it, is that he was weighing his decisions up against this one single value, and that was, is it going to help us sell more cars? He also weighed it against our number one business objective, which was to sell cars. Didn't matter if it was new cars or used cars. And we had both in our location. When I first started, we had what? We had 9? Or was it 12? God, it's been so long now. 12, something like that. Big number. New car lines plus used cars as well. We'll just leave it at that. So anytime somebody said, well, I had a suggestion, he would always say, is it going to help us sell more cars? And if they couldn't answer yes, then he would very politely tell them, then it's not worth us pursuing. That's what I mean by weighing your decisions against these values. And in this case, will it help us sell more cars is both company values and the number one business objective as well. And we've gotten away from that. And I think if we start making that a priority, then I think what we're going to find is that the cultures within our organization are going to start to get better. Employees' attitudes, behaviors are going to get better. Performance is going to get better. But let me tell you, it's not anything easy. It's a long road to hoe. It is a long game strategy. And so even with the people that I hire and contract, I'll ask them a question based off of the core values. Are we in our integrity if we do this? Are we communicating well if we do this, if we say this? And I'll ask those questions. And we have to ask those questions, because if we don't ask those questions, then we're actually not weighing ourselves up against those values. And so that's the role that these values play. And I know core values has become this buzzword, right? If you go to any type of business convention or a stage where somebody's talking, like we talk about core values, but nobody really digs into how to actually apply them. And you can't have them without applying them. It doesn't make sense to a grown adult. Everything has to have relevancy. So having core values is one thing. Using them is another. And if you don't use your core values and just have them as paint on a wall, or somebody's, scrolling screenshot on their computer in on their office, without actually giving them legs and making them work just as hard as the rest of us are, right? Have your core values be part of your team. Teach your employees how to actually make decisions by weighing them into whatever it is that they're doing, right? You're going to find very quickly who's going to jump on board and who's not. And so I think understanding worldview is going to be important. And that way, when you are talking to somebody who tends to be a little bit more difficult, or as you perceive difficult, or challenge, or quite frankly is difficult, then you can start approaching them with questions kind of like what Tom did. Is it going to, if doing this, if you do this, is it going to help us achieve this? If you do this, is it going to mean that our company or our team or your actions even are aligned with this core value? So that's how you start talking to somebody who has a very unique worldview other than you. And you quickly realize that you guys are not seeing eye to eye. So go back to the company core values, start incorporating them into your conversations, and start teaching your people with a different worldview than you how to actually start making good decisions. So that's what I got for you today. I hope you all have a wonderful, wonderful day. If I got some really cool stuff coming for you here. If you just stumbled on this episode for the first time and you've never heard about me before, anything like that, yay, love to have you in the ecosphere. I think it's awesome. Thank you so much. You can find me. First off, I'm on social media. I'm on Instagram. I'm on Facebook. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on TikTok. Easiest way to find me is hashtag Dear Brenda. Okay, because I have one of those weird last names that people look at and they're like, how do you say that thing? Like it's neck bottle. So it's Neckvatal. So you can actually find me just by simply searching hashtag Dear Brenda, and I'll pop up, and then you can go ahead and start liking and saving and even sharing some of the stuff that I put out there. And if you do that, it would be really great. You're listening to this podcast, and I'm going to ask you for a small favor. Do me a favor, leave a 5-star review. Let people know what value you got out of this. And if you know somebody who's struggling with dealing with a difficult people person of some kind, forward this episode or any of the past episodes over to them, and I'd really appreciate it. Oh, by the way, I forgot to tell you I'm on YouTube as well. So just look at them all. They're all there. And in addition to that, I got a new book coming out and a phone call coming in. I got a new book coming out with a really good friend of mine. His name is Will Branham. He's a U.S. Navy SEAL. And the book is titled Mission Ready. And what we basically talk about is how to actually start building high-performing teams. So we co-authored the book together. He's got the first half of the book. He talks about it from applying the lessons that he's learned in being a 26-year career veteran Navy SEAL. And then I come in focused more on the people and the HR side of things. Not so like, boring HR stuff that people don't want to hear about, the things that drive them crazy. I'm talking about like proactive, progressive, actual good practices in HR kind of stuff, like how you should be looking at things and how you should not be looking at things, right? So anyway, so it's awesome. It's dropping soon. And in addition to that, bonus material, at least that's how it sits right now, is that Rob O'Neill, who actually was the U.S. SEAL, is a good friend of Will's, and he has graciously written the foreword for the book. So we got a little bonus material in there as well. So anyway, with that being said, I hope you guys have an amazing rest of your day. You can find me on my website at brendaneckbottle.com, and I look forward to seeing you guys next time around. Have a good day.